Good morning and welcome to this meeting of the Overview and Scrutiny Management Board. My name is Councillor Adam Stokes. I am the chairman of this board, and Councillor Tom Smith, vice chairman of the board, is also in attendance. Can I remind you that the audio-visual feed of this formal public meeting is being broadcasted live via the County Council's website, and all your comments will remain accessible online as the meeting recording remains on the Council's website. And with this in mind, I'd like to welcome members of the public and press watching this live. I'd like to welcome the executive councillors and executive support councillors who are attending our meeting today, and also welcome the members of the corporate leadership team who are present as well. I would like to begin with a health and safety announcement. There is no fire drill planned this morning. In the event of the fire alarm sounding, we need to leave the council chamber through the doors behind you and leave the building through the reception into the front car park. We then need to wait in the car park for further instructions. Can I remind everyone to ensure their mobiles, laptops and iPads are on silent for the duration of this meeting? Also, when invited to speak, can you please ensure that you switch on your microphone? Otherwise, those attending the meeting via Teams and members of the press and public listening to our meeting online won't be able to hear you. Please be aware that you need to speak directly into the microphones to be heard. The hearing loop is also now activated. Requests to speak will be collated by the Vice Chairman, so if you wish to speak during the meeting, can you please raise your hand and Councillor Tom Smith will make a note. We'll try to ensure that everyone has the opportunity to ask questions and make contributions. However, I will close down the debate to ensure we keep to time. Therefore, I would appreciate contributions to be succinct and concise, and also ask that you indicate early when you wish to speak. So we'll now move on to the formal agenda, which is item 1, apologies for absent and replacement members. Rachel, do we have any apologies today, please?
Thank you, Chairman. We have apologies from Councillor Marfleet. However, we have Councillor Ashton replacing Councillor Marfleet for this meeting only. We also have apologies from Martin Kyle, the Church representative.
That's great, thank you. We'll now move on to, are there any further apologies? No, thank you. We'll now move on to item 2, which is declarations of members' interests. Members of the board are reminded that they only need to declare any relevant interests which are not declared on the declaration of pecuniary interests form. Do any members wish to declare an interest? No, that's great, thank you. We'll now move on to item 3, which is the minutes of the meeting held only on the 29th of February 2024. And this is to confirm and sign the minutes from the last meeting of the board as a correct record. These can be found on pages 5 to 14 of the agenda pack. I will go through them individually today. We'll change the route. So on any problems on page 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and finally page 13. Although, do I have a proposer for those, please? Councillor Kendrick and a seconder, Councillor Smith. Can we take a vote? All those in favour, please? Thank you. That is unanimous. Thank you. These are agreed. So we'll now move on to item 4, which is announcements by the Chairman, Executive Councillors and Chief Officers. I do not have any announcements today. I would like to point out that we do have a busy agenda that includes consideration of 2 pre-decision items. I should therefore like to begin by asking those presenting the reports to take them as read by members and only summarise key points and the type of input expected by the board. Introductions of the reports will be capped at 5 minutes to ensure we have sufficient time to consider and debate. We'll now move on to Executive Councillor announcements. Do we have any from there? No, thank you. Any Chief Officer announcements? No, thank you. So we'll now move on to item 5, which is consideration of call-ins. Rachel, are there any call-ins to consider, please?
No, we haven't received any call-ins.
Thank you. Item 6, consideration of councillor calls for action. Rachel, have we received any of those, please?
No, we haven't.
Thank you for that. So we'll now move on to item 7, which is the Greater Lincolnshire devolution. So this is a pre-decision scrutiny item found on pages 15 to 256 of the agenda pack, and invites the board to review and comment on the reports of the leader of the council and executive councillor for resources, communications and commissioning, seeking agreement on further steps to secure devolution to Greater Lincolnshire. The report considers the outcomes of the recent public consultation, reviews the devolution proposal, and seeks a decision on additional implementation measures, including the submission of the final proposal to the Secretary of State along with associated delegations. The report is due to be considered by Council on the 13th of March 2024 prior to the executive decision making by the Leader of the Council. The views of the Board will be reported to the Council tomorrow and to the Leader of the Council as part of the consideration of this item. So our actions are that we, 1, consider the attached report and determine whether the Board supports the recommendation to the Leader of the Council as set out in the report, and 2, agree any additional comments to be passed on to the Leader of the Council in relation to this item. This report will be presented by Lee Surderfield, Assistant Director of Corporate, and also in attendance to support with questions and answers are Andy Gutherson, the Executive Director of Place. I don't think Kate's here, is she? Oh, sorry, Kate Sorb-Still, Engagement and Communication Team Leader, and Daniel Larkin, Policy Advisor. So we'll start with you, Lee, please.
Okay, thank you. So the report builds on the previous report that came to you on the 30th of November. As you've stated, we completed 8 weeks of consultation from the 4th of December to 29th of January. Throughout that period, we held 22 public events. There was a range of coverage on TV and social media and radio, as well as literature being placed into a range of settings such as GP surgeries and libraries, etc. During the consultation period, over 14,000 people visited the consultation page to access the information that the Council had put in the public domain, and that generated 4,101 responses during that period of time. And that came from a range of individuals, businesses, others in local government, and other organisations such as those in the voluntary and community sector. At this point, the response rate that we had has been the highest seen on a devolution consultation, and that is due in part to the extensive promotion and the number of events that we held. We have since analysed the consultation findings, and that's been done independently, and that report is within the pack. But that should be read in conjunction with the response table, which takes those consultation findings, considers them, and explains how and where they are applied to the revised proposal document. That is now to be considered by the 3 upper-tier authorities, so ourselves, North and North East Lincolnshire. And what we know from that information is that older people were generally more negative, particularly in relation to governance. Younger people were generally more positive across the board, including the role of a directly elected mayor. Business Voice was very supportive of the proposals set out, and overall the local government voice was supportive, as were other organisations. The survey was designed to test the full range of the proposal and gave an opportunity for people to provide free text comments. The survey was effective in doing that, with nearly 3,000 comments being provided. And what we found through the independent analysis was those that took a negative view on questions 1 to 6 were more likely to provide feedback, written feedback, within the consultation survey. So around about 86% that were negative throughout provided comments, whereas it was about 70% overall were providing comments. So when we're looking at the analysis, we need to understand that it was structured based on the responses received, and those responses don't exactly match the population of Greater Lincolnshire, but it is a strong response nonetheless. We also received a significant number of positive comments and a series of policy considerations, again, which are set out in the report for you to consider, and they've been worked through into the revised proposal document. And that document sets out areas of enhanced accountability and how we respond to the themes around governance, particularly in terms of accountability and scrutiny. We have also set out greater clarity in terms of investment and the benefits of devolution and how that will be felt across the area, as well as starting to reflect how the proposal can be assured in the years to come. We also have a series of technical changes in terms of the powers table, where we've continued to engage with government departments to refine the content of that. And we have set out both the consultation summary within the proposal, and we have set out further clarifications in terms of beyond Deal 1. So that gives the next steps and takes it on from where it was in November. So you'll see the revised proposal, which is at page 234 of your packs, starts to set out what will happen from today through to May 2025, should a decision to proceed be made by the three authorities, and should the Secretary of State be minded to progress devolution for Greater Lincolnshire. So on that basis, Chairman, and given the summary of asks, I'll pause at that point and happy to take questions.
Thank you for that, Lee. Do we have any questions to Lee? Councillor Brooks, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I've got a question about the scrutiny arrangements on governance and transparency. And I've been reading through it and can see that the arrangements for scrutiny involve the districts, borough and city councils nominating people to the scrutiny committee. And I'm just wondering exactly how that will be made up from the point of view. There'll be some councils, district or borough councils, that haven't got, are not one of the four that are on the CCA non-voting right members. And I'm wondering if they going to automatically get a place on the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, exactly how that works, because I couldn't really tell from the text in the report. There was one place where I saw it said they may get a place on the Scrutiny Committee, and I just wonder if that could be enlarged on, please.
Yeah, so Overview and Scrutiny has a set of rules around it in terms of its representative nature. And we are working with Department for Levelling Up at the moment to develop further narrative around that representative structure. District councils, the 4 district councils that have seats, also have the ability to substitute members, and those substitutions could be within those authorities or could be across to other authorities. That gives the ability for substitute members to sit within the scrutiny arrangement. We also need to work through the CCA, the Combined Authority, in terms of membership size and committee size, and ensure that structure is where you'd expect it to be. But there's also provision for us to bring in other district councils into the scrutiny arrangements. What we are doing is reviewing the government scrutiny protocol and the best practice guidance that has been provided, and that's recently been updated since we started this process. So we'll be working through that with colleagues in district councils to ensure a strong voice and appropriate representation from them.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, I just think it's important if the district is not got a place as one of the 4 within the CCA, that they would have a place on scrutiny, and I think that we ought to be writing things up in that way that they do get a place on scrutiny, because that is a way of really including them in the process rather than just as a substitute somewhere if that proves necessary for somebody to be substituted.
Thank you for that, Councillor Brooks. Councillor Hill, you want to come in on this
Yeah,
point?
totally agree, and I think that's a political expectation of the 3 districts who aren't at the time on the CCA. They will actually have a more leading role in and a guaranteed places on the scrutiny. So I think it's a question of just making sure that's embedded within the details and discussions with the civil servants. But certainly there is a strong political view that is the right thing to do, and they should then, which also in terms of scrutiny, make sure that you're not scrutinising your own work, it's somebody else scrutinising the work of the combined authority. So I totally agree with you, Councillor Brooks.
Thank you for that. Yeah, and I mean, if that could go forward from this scrutiny committee as something that we make a point of, that should be included, that the districts who don't get a place as one of the 4 will get a place on scrutiny. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. Councillor Lee, please. Councillor Dilks first, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to ask the question, under the revised proposal that you've mentioned, could you just clarify, though, that there are, of course, 7 district councils that we're aware of within Lincolnshire, and only 4 of them will, under the new proposal, still have places on the new authority that will be created. But even those 4 will only have a vote on, quotes, some matters. So whilst I can hear Councillor Brooks' concern, which is understandable coming from Boston, when you can see that in the responses, 80% of those who voted, if you like, for a preference in the consultation, voted against the governance arrangements. I can see why, and I can see Boston's concerns about that, and others, particularly in the south of the county. But I just wanted to clarify that point, that there is only going to be 4 representatives on this authority as proposed from the districts, and as I say, that they will only, even those that have got the privileged places, will only be have votes on some matters. Thank you.
So the proposal in terms of district council representation hasn't changed since the proposal that was brought to you in November and December. The membership type that a district council has is called a non-constituent membership, of which there are 4 seats for district councils. It is for district councils to nominate who will be their representatives, and they'll do that through a joint committee. And as per the answer to the previous question, they have the ability to substitute members should they wish, which can be across the 7. So there are mechanisms for representation across the board, as there are through the audit provision, as Councillor Hill has just set out. And there are other ways in which members can attend meetings and can engage in work programmes. Now, clearly, it is not for the County Council to set out which district council should be present and which shouldn't. That is a matter for them to discuss through their joint committee arrangements. We're working with them to develop that framework, but we would expect them to fill those 4 seats. In terms of voting, the intention or the starting point of the legislation would be that district councils don't have a vote. Our intention through the proposal, as it says, is that they would be allowed to vote on some or most matters. Again, that is a matter for the combined authority to determine through the construction of its constitution. But again, there has been a number of conversations around where voting should be agreed, and that's all been worked through with district council representatives.
Councillor Hill, you want to come in this point?
Just to answer Councillor Dilks' specific point, in terms of what district, the constituent district, the non-constituent members of district councils on the combined authority, the intention is to be as inclusive as possible, but that will not include those duties which currently sit with upper tier authorities. And I suppose the most important of those is transport. But everything else, I'm not sure if the Chief Exec can help me. There's transport and 1 or 2 other things which currently reside with the upper tiers, and also just to note that there are no powers that will be taken away from district councils, although there is a subtlety within the legislation in terms of the local transport plan will actually now become the remit of the Mayoral Combined Authority as opposed to the constituent members currently doing it.
Yes, thank you very much, Councillor Hill. So just to add to that, the vast majority of decisions of the Mayoral Combined Authority will enable the non-constituent councils to have a vote, with the exception of transport, because transport is currently a responsibility of the upper tiers. It's not currently a responsibility of the districts, and so therefore the current arrangements would continue, which is that the upper tiers would get to have a vote on transport. In addition, though, the Mayor, as opposed to the Mayoral Combined Authority, the Mayor does have a few reserved decisions as well. So one would be around a mayoral budget, one would be around if the Mayor wished to set up, for example, a development corporation, and those mayoral decisions the non-constituent councils would not have a vote on. However, there are a number of clauses within the proposal which, for example, would make sure that for any mayoral a development area, there must be consent from the district council. So there are provisions in place to, I suppose, temper some of those powers.
Thank you for that. Councillor Lee, please.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to make some comments, actually, because this has been presented to us in a certain light, and I want to give an alternative view on the way it's been presented. First of all, we're told that 4K responses is really, really good. Well, actually, I'm not sure what the total population is for Lincolnshire. According to the local media, it's 1 million, and I don't know if that's an accurate figure, but 4,000 out of that is pretty poor, actually. It's a pretty poor response rate. And just to say that because everybody else's was worse, that makes ours good, I'm sorry, I don't accept that argument. My second point, in December, I voiced concerns about the governance arrangements, and I think that this consultation has borne those concerns out. I don't agree with the comment in the report that says it's the responses are broadly supportive, because they're not. People don't want a mayor, so it's not broadly supported. And some of the margins are very tight, much as they were with Brexit, and look where that got us. Page 20, people said that they don't feel that the benefits the disadvantages outweigh the benefits, and I'm starting to think that myself. I think as well, saying in the report that, you know, the government's making us have a mayor, we can't have this without a mayor. Again, that's not a good enough argument. You know, we're making our minds up. Blaming it, a Conservative council, blaming it on a Conservative government just isn't good enough, actually. And I would support the comments that this just isn't democratic. I mean, it'll get through because of the numbers in this chamber, but I do feel that this has been pushed through rather than being supported by the people of Lincolnshire. And actually, some sort of referendum process would have probably been better and might actually have brought a different result. So, broadly speaking, I don't think this is a good consultation response. I'm sorry, and that is my view, and I don't agree with the way that it's been presented. Thank you.
Lee, do you want to make a comment?
So the analysis that was completed of the consultation says it gives us an indicative view of the population's views. So it isn't purely...
Can I just say the population that responded, not the whole of the population? We need to be clear about that.
Yeah, so that's why it's an indicative view rather than a representative view. So the consultation level and the levels of response per age category, as an example, don't exactly match our population. So as a result, it's indicative rather than representative. We put a huge amount of work into trying to get people to engage, and that saw well-attended events, that saw thousands of bits of information be sent out to various venues, and as we said, 14,000 people came to the site, read the information, and 4,101 responded. So we have a population that is aware of devolution, but as always on this sort of consultation, the number that comes through is somewhat lower. And that's partly why the Secretary of State's test is to say, have elected representatives considered it as part of their decision-making process to reach a conclusion as to what to do next. The consultation isn't binary, though, in terms of one question outweighing the others. There were 6 questions with a scale, and we have to take the views across each of those 6 questions. So a negative response to one doesn't outweigh a positive response to another question. Yes, there were themes within the feedback, which have been presented in the report, but what you can see is people are supportive about ambitions for transport, they're supportive for ambitions around skills, they're supportive for environmental aspects that are contained within the proposal, but there are a number of concerns, as you've stated, around the governance. The governance aspects were around the cost of the administration, and we've committed to keep that to a minimal level and review options to improve efficiency across the upper tier authorities. And there were concerns about the requirement for an elected mayor. And that does come through in the consultation, and that's clearly stated within the report. The simple reality is government policy says you can't have 1 to 5 if you don't have 6. So as decision makers, you're asked to consider whether the benefits outweigh the area of concern that has been provided. There's also some narrative around a referendum, as there was on social media and various outlets during the consultation period. And as set out back in November, there is no requirement for us to conduct a referendum. Secretary of State has a set process and a set of tests that must be satisfied, and that is the process that we are following. Secretary of State is effectively saying, have we conducted a consultation, and has that been taken into account in the decision-making process? And we have done that in keeping with the approach that has been taken many, many times across the country. So a referendum wouldn't necessarily add any additional weight, wouldn't necessarily be a consideration for the Secretary of State.
Thanks. Just to say, Chair, it wasn't a criticism of officers or anything that they've done. It seriously wasn't. I don't think that the response rate and some of the comments are actually a meaningful consultation. That's my point.
Thank you for that. Councillor Brockway, please.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Couple of things. So just following on from Councillor Lee, I can see actually where you're coming from. I would respectfully disagree, because my feeling always with a consultation is if the questions are put out there properly with all the different ways of people accessing them, then not responding to a consultation is also a decision. It's their democratic right not to respond to a consultation if they don't want to. But then upcoming decisions have to consider those who have responded. So I do feel that not responding is people's right as well, as it is with any election. It's difficult, though. It's always better if people do respond. It's much more helpful. Councillor Brooks has asked some of the questions I was going to ask about the districts, but I've wondered, why does it have to be all or nothing with these 7 councils? Have we considered the possibility of membership of the constituent group being on a rotating basis? Why, for instance, could we not have, as they do with, in the European Parliament, various positions there, why could we not have a council in for a year, then it moves over in the next council, instead of 4 in, 3 out permanently? Thank you.
So we are considering non-constituent membership, so districts are non-constituent, whereas the county, North East are constituent members. So the 3, North, East and Lincolnshire, are there permanently. For the non-constituent district, borough and city council seats, it is perfectly feasible for that to rotate on an appropriate basis. Their joint committee will make nominations. They will determine through their structure of that, the frequency of those nominations. That could be a year, that could be a different period. So as a result, that could rotate over time.
Debbie, do you want to come in on this?
Yeah,
please?
thank you. Just to add to that, because I can see that there's a number of questions around this. So, first of all, I think that our starting point, certainly from the negotiations so far with the district councils, have been that we would really welcome them saying how they would like it to work, rather than perhaps us saying how we would like it to work. They want to set up the joint committee. We think it's important that they work together to agree how they want to work. So there's been, I suppose, less discussion directly with us and much more discussion with them. Certainly, I think that we would see a rotational arrangement. Whether or not they want a rotational arrangement, we're not too sure yet. But I would be, I suppose, surprised if they didn't. So I think that we're likely to be into that space. But as a starting point, as I said, we wanted them to come up with how they want it to work. Just as well, I know that Lee's alluded to this, but again, there will be, as part of the infrastructure, should the proposals go through, 3 other substantive committees, as well as scrutiny and as well as audit. And as Lee and Councillor Hill have said, the 4 constituent members would then elect substitutes to attend on those 3 committees, as well as scrutiny and as well as audit. And again, they may decide that they want all 7 councils involved across the totality of those committees. So when we talk about 4 non-constituent members being on the combined authority, I think we're probably seeing that as the discussions unfold with the districts, that it's more likely that they will all be involved in the infrastructure somehow. So I hope that's helpful.
Thank you for that. Councillor Carrington, please.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Councillor Lee and Councillor Brockway touched on a couple of points that I wanted to make, but I am reminded of a member of this council who is not a member of this committee and is not with us this morning, saying very forcibly last autumn in a debate about this subject, what were we going to do when the consultation said no? Well, we're in a slightly different place because the consultation hasn't said that. I actually, before my colleague spoke, was just going to speak to praise the process of this consultation, which has gone through. I'm looking at the details on pages 22 and 23 of the agenda before us this morning. The sheer range of opportunity which has been given to the residents of Greater Lincolnshire is very notable from this. In terms of the response rate, that is a matter of individual choice. To answer the point made by Councillor Lee, the population of Lincolnshire is some 770,000. The population of Greater Lincolnshire is where we get roughly 1 million. Those, of course, are all residents. Not voting age is a very significantly lower number. But we have a very, very thorough process by which every resident of Greater Lincolnshire has had multiple opportunities to express a view, or not to express a view. And I hope we're not going to go down a road where those who are perhaps less pleased with the outcome of this process then basically disrespects it because they don't like the result. I think we should acknowledge that as an indicative consultation, it has been very thorough and everybody has been given the opportunity to express a view. The fact that we have variations within an overall general direction of travel is unsurprising. The fact that we have variations within the geography of Greater Lincolnshire is unsurprising. But that just underlines the fact that what we have in the devolution proposal is something complicated. It does have a number of different elements in it, not all of which align perfectly, and some of which, frankly, are in tension. But as we've heard from our officers, the decision which this council and others will have to make is whether we go with something, warts and all, and that's what's being offered by the government. So I do think that the process, which is what we're looking at this morning, I believe, and we'll obviously be debating later this week in more detail, but the process which has been gone through here is sound. It is only indicative, but what I'm particularly pleased about is that whilst giving us an overall direction of travel from the population of Greater Lincolnshire overall, it also highlights those variations of view which can inform the decision of this and other councils as we go forward. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you for those comments, Councillor Carrington. I think most in the chamber will echo those. I say most, not all. because I do think it's been a very thorough consultation process, and to get 30, I think I've worked out 31% of the 14,000 responding is quite a high number. I know that the population is 1.1 million of Greater Lincolnshire, but as Councillor Carrington and a few other members have said, that no response is also a response, you could argue as well. But yeah, are there any further? No response is also a response because they have got no comments to make. Are there any? Councillor Hill, please.
I just want to prolong, because you've got obviously lots of other items. I mean, I think that it is a fair point, as Councillor Carrington said, we made very sure that not only was we reach out as far as possible, we did make a big effort to make sure that everybody in Lincolnshire was aware of this proposal through the media and through County News, which went to every household in our part of Lincolnshire, which actually flagged up the issue. So I don't believe there's anybody in Lincolnshire who could have had a vote who was unaware of the proposal. And I think, as has been said, it gave an indicative feeling of what people felt. You can pick out this, that and the other as to what that told us. But I think what it told us is that, yes, I think the number is higher than the 4,101 is a better figure than elsewhere. But obviously there is a sort of presumption that because somebody didn't vote or didn't engage with the consultation, that somehow some people would like to believe they were against it. Well, no, it doesn't sort of work like that to me, because they either, if they're having taken the principle they're aware of the process and they chose not to engage, either says to me, either they were broadly content with what was being proposed or didn't really have a view either way. So I think it is a valid piece. And even the one in the item 6 where there was a negative response to having a mayor, less than half, just less than half of the people actually actively said no. So on the argument, on that argument alone, you could say that actually not even 50% of the people who voted were against the mayor. So I do think that when you take it in the round, and it is the round, we're being asked as members and councillors to make a judgment, is this deal worthwhile in the round of what we've heard and what we'll get immediately and what we'll get in the future. I think it was right. And I think the other thing that somebody said to me last week, whether it's the same person that Councillor Carrington was referring to, that of course we are all voted on first past the post, and there'll be people who have voted, say there was a 25% turnout somewhere, or even less, say there was a 20% turnout for a by-election, and somebody just got over 50% of the vote, well, that person then is elected by 10%, by positive 10% of the population. If you follow the argument which some are making about the lack of numbers, well, then that person who's been elected doesn't argue that 90% of the voters don't like me. What they'll say is, well, I went for an election and that was the result. So I do think we've worked very hard to engage with the public, and we've broadly had a response. It's not a totally positive response, but I think that's the choice we've got before us. Do we proceed with this deal for what we might get now and might get in the future, or do we say, and that's why that is democracy, we're elected to make choices on behalf of the residents we represent, and that will be a choice for us tomorrow, Chairman.
Thank you for that, Councillor Hill. Do we have any? Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chairman. This is more around some of the amendments that were made, because there were a few things I noticed as I was reading it. It's more if the leader would be gracious enough to sort of take them away if possible. One of the sections mentions, quite rightly, working with carers and looked after children. I'd welcome if there could be something in there around working with our ex-forces community, as we are the second biggest area in the country for veterans, pads brats such as myself and other family members. So that would be very much appreciated. Also, Lincolnshire actually is home to an awful lot of innovation in terms of the defence sector in this county, and notwithstanding the, shall I say, ongoing legal situation with Scampton, that could be a real springboard for it to grow even more. We've got a long history here in Lincolnshire with being Bomber County of innovation in defence and skills, and I think this is an ideal time to push that through this process potentially longer term, but an ideal time to do it. And the only other point I'd like to make, Chairman, is the primacy of EVs. When you see that the likes of BMW, Toyota and other manufacturers are all going towards hydrogen rather than EV-powered vehicles, it's just a note of caution on that at the time it was probably the correct thing to put in there, because at that time that move hadn't taken place, but that move is now taking place with a large number of companies, and it seems to be ever quickening. So I think we need to be future-proofing ourselves on that. But beyond that, Chairman, as has already been said, those that wish to comment have commented, and as the leader has already said, we operate on a first-past-the-post model, and I don't see any of it. I can't remember any county election in 2021 where 50% of the electorate turned out. So, by that logic, we could also be the same could be accused of all of us. But we are where we are. Those that voted wanted to, and we're here, and we are, as their representatives, we're here to make decisions for them. That's what we're here for, basically. And as the leader said, we'll do that tomorrow. But no, I think the consultation was very thorough. I was at one of the events for a good 2 hours before I had to go away to duties at West Lindsey, and it was very well done. And my thanks to officers and everybody that put those on, and all the PR around that and the press, because everybody that wanted to comment could. You could not be aware devolution was going on in Lincolnshire, because it was very well executed. Thank you, Chairman.
Lee, do you want to come back?
Yeah, so just to clarify that the Combined Authority is governed by the Armed Forces Covenant, so we'll engage Armed Forces through its processes as a result. In terms of innovation and defence, the investment fund can apply to any sector. Clearly, defence is one of the game-changing sectors for Greater Lincolnshire, so therefore you would expect some investment into that space. And then in terms of EVs and hydrogen fuels, etc., government policy on hydrogen is relatively limited, particularly compared to EV provision. So the proposals are written in the current policy context. Clearly what we have done is set out the next steps in terms of how, should this go ahead, the Combined Authority would seek to move with policy. So should hydrogen grow in prevalence and there be investment opportunities within that, of course we'd expect the Combined Authority to seek to maximise benefit for Greater Lincolnshire in that space.
Thank you for that. Councillor Ashton, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. It is really interesting listening to the debate around the governance and the issues that have arisen there, and I think there's some good suggestions come forward from this committee. But notwithstanding that focus on governance, it is obviously quite right that the CCA and the overview arrangements are as broadly representative as they possibly can be. It's reassuring to my mind on page 226 in reference to the mayoral budget that is going to be subject to a combined authority vote. And as any colleagues that have ever tried to push an initiative forward will be reassured that the control of the Treasury function, the control of the budget being subject to that combined authority does give significant weight. However, moving away from the governance side of things, I am delighted that on page 61, the responses relevant to the environment considerations of the deal are actually outstanding across individuals, businesses, local government and others. There is overwhelming support for those proposals, overwhelming encouragement that the papers that we have in front of us, the deal that we are considering, will have a genuinely positive benefit for Lincolnshire. And when I read in some of this stuff, notwithstanding the committee I'm privileged to chair, the opportunities that come through a coastal partnership promotes the natural and cultural heritage of the Lincolnshire coast and tourism, and a new partnership for water that focuses on flood prevention and water management. It's really heartening to see the consultee responses across all of those areas being so encouraging on this. And I'm optimistic that should all of this go ahead and according to plan, when it's functioning, it's things like this that will really matter to the people of Lincolnshire far more than who has a seat in what year on what committee.
Thank you for those comments. Do we have any further debate or comments on this? No? Thank you for that. So I will move... Oh, sorry, Councillor Dilks.
I think people must be reading a different report to the one I've read. To hear that it's a positive response, yes, of course it's a positive response if you say to people, would you like a better bus? Or, you know, would you like some apple pie with your cream? Maybe, you know, people are going to say, yes, of course, we'll have all these things. I find it absolutely ludicrous that we can say that the elephant in the room doesn't outweigh what other people, you know, all the other bits and bobs around it. And how we can say that the governance, you know, is not more important than any of these other things. This is the biggest change that is being proposed, that is being imposed on people of Lincolnshire in 50 years, half a century. 1974 was the last time, you know, these changes were made. And we're talking about having a new, an extra tier of government. It's going to cost money, of course it is. I understand what we're saying, oh, we're not going to take any powers away from the districts. Okay, we can debate that. But I don't think when you actually read the report that we can legitimately, anybody could legitimately go ahead and say, it's fine, it's a positive response from the people of Lincolnshire. It frankly isn't. Anybody, if you go through the results, now I hear, you know, Councillor Hill and others saying, oh, it's, you know, it's a relatively positive response. But what's being looked at with these, with seeing it in the round is, first of all, we're including responses from North East Lincolnshire and North Lincolnshire, which I remind colleagues here, none of us represent. I'm not bothered about what they want, and I know that they'll get the advantage of it. I've always said that. This is about giving the south bank of the Humber, you know, the economic boost that is probably required on the south bank of the Humber. You know, I'm not sure what crumbs from the table we get to pick up, but there we are. But when you look at, if you take out, first of all, out of the 9 authority areas, if you look at the, and I really would ask colleagues to please look at this before tomorrow. I'm not sure we've all sort of had a chance, of course, to fully take in the 300-page report that we've got before us. But if you take out the responses from North East and North Lincolnshire, first of all, only one of them, and the only out of the 9 areas, there's only one that's voted positively for it, and that is North East Links. I believe I'm right in saying yes. North Links. If you take out the those who didn't have a view either way, and we just look at the strongly for, the strongly for and the fors, and then the strongly against and the against, and we put those together and we take out the undecideds, you end up with only one area in the whole of the 9 authorities have said yes please to a mayor. Even North Lincolnshire, Scunthorpe based, say no by 51.3%, say no, those that have actually expressed a preference. And then we go down the 7 areas, the 7 district areas of Lincolnshire. Every single one of them says no to a mayor. We don't want one. Very marginally, I admit, in Lincoln it's 50.9%. West Lindsey, 53% say no to a mayor. And then we get to East Lindsey, North Kestervan is 60% no to a mayor. East Lindsey, 63.8% no to a mayor. In my area, it's South Kesteven, 2 to 1 of those that voted say no mayor, thank you, 66.4%. Then we've got South Holland, 70%, just 70.0%, 70.05% say no to a mayor. And Boston, it's 80% say no to a mayor. 4 out of 5 who voted say no mayor. We don't want an elected mayor. Now, we shouldn't be surprised at that, because that's exactly what happened the last time that they were asked, that people were asked. It's exactly pretty much the same a reflection of it. The only difference then was that then at least the district councils were part of the equation. They were, it was an agreement, the devolution deal that was previously put to Lincolnshire involved the districts as part of the not the consultation, but a part of the negotiations. Clearly, they're not part of these negotiations, and you can see why. And last time, of course, I would remind colleagues, this council voted against the devolution deal. What's changed? And we can see from the responses, I was willing to sort of wait. I wanted a referendum. I wanted people, as you know, to be given the chance to vote, and then we could get, an absolute clear, much more representative, if you like, rather than an indicative way as to what the people of Lincolnshire think. But frankly, there's no way I can vote for something like this. I represent people in South Kesteven, and they've said 2 to 1, no thanks to a mayor. And I'd remind you, every one of your areas has similarly voted against the idea of a mayor. So I can't understand why we think it's such a good idea. And why, Councillor Carrington, we say, you're saying if people don't like the result, they say, if I might say, with huge respect, and I've got huge respect for you personally, and others, I don't think you're accepting the result here. Question 6, governance, has to be the first point on this whole thing. That has to have full consideration, and you can't go further than it. If people say no to a mayor, and we I was going to say accept it, but if we can see that they are saying no to a mayor, I'm not sure where else it can go. Just finally, I would just sort of say I am really worried about the district council input into this. I understand, perhaps why it's come up with only 4. I know it was only 2 originally, and it's been negotiated up to 4 district councils having a place. They don't get to vote on everything. I can see the logic for some of that, but there is a real problem here, I think, with the district councils across Lincolnshire, particularly if you look at, in Boston, they're saying no. What are they going to be saying as a district council? They're going to think they're... And so I just think it's very dangerous to be going down this road. And I just think there should be more caution, frankly, rather than just being, I don't want to use the word steamrolled, but pushed into it under a time constraint. Frankly, I think there's enough to say no, we don't want to go down this route. But even if you guys thought it was a good idea still, then at least put it to a referendum, and we could still have one in the May elections, because there are police elections. And although I've been told, oh no, it'll cost £2 million, well, democracy, yes, democracy does cost money. I don't believe it'd cost that money at the time when people are going to be going to the polls anyway. Thank you.
Councillor Hill, please.
Thank you. Yeah, we could spend all day here cherry picking out the bits we like and we don't like, and say this is the evidence of the way we should be. The truth of the matter is, as Councillor Dilks well knows, we are being given a set of evidence here, and we're given the opportunities of having a extra money and investment coming to Lincolnshire, and actually being much more at the top table, if you like, of we could be one of 11 or 12 a handful of combined authorities who then have priority access to government ministers. So that's on the positive side. I don't think anybody's arguing that we are, yippee, we want a mayor, but the rules of the game are quite clear. If you want those advantages, which are substantial, and you know, £720 million over the period is substantial, but the rules are clear, both in the time scale, and the government's been very clear. Yes, you could have had it on the same day as the elections, but that was not a choice open to us. We were quite clear that obviously to get it through the current government's timescale, it had to be dealt with at the time they insisted on, and also as part of the deal, you've got to have a mayor. And I don't think anybody's greatly enthusiastic about having a mayor, but the choice that we will have to make is that, if you like, a price worth paying to get these advantages? And I think that is something certainly myself and colleagues have taken the view that, yes, that is a price worth paying. Councillor Dilk said it's going to be a total change since '74. No, it isn't, because the structures we currently have will still be there, and there will be, in effect, a consultation arrangement chaired by a mayor above what, well, working with what we do at the moment. So I think that, to me, is where we are. And you keep saying that, you know, keep saying, well, that people voted against the mayor, but we'll come back to the argument, well, actually, you know, when you look at individual areas, and Boston, I would point out that there is an active campaign, frankly, of disinformation going on in Boston, where the current leadership of the current council there are actually making points which are not actually true. The fact that Boston has somehow been neglected and left out of investment, that is not true. And I have written to the leader of Boston Borough Council to point out very clearly that the evidence actually shows that is not the case. And then if people are given propaganda which tells them that we're getting no money and it's all going everywhere else, and I'm afraid that has got some traction. So I say it is, when you're coming back to the devolution debate, it is a discussion we've got to have. And it's not, this question is not, you know, do we want a mayor, yes or not? Do you want a mayor with all that goes with it, the positives? And that's a choice as the elected representatives of the people that live in Greater Lincolnshire. So you can't just pick out one area and say, well, let's ignore the rest. We're talking about the whole of the historic county of Lincolnshire. And to me, one of the other great benefits is this does cement in the national framework that Lincolnshire, the historic county of Lincolnshire, will remain as one and will be more of a master of its own destiny than if we do nothing, and that hasn't been discussed much this morning. If we do nothing, there is, in terms of what we know the current Conservative government and potential other governments might proceed with, this devolution agenda isn't going to go away. It will happen, and it will happen over a period. And there is also an argument, do we want to get in there first while we can actually do it to our advantage? And the other thing is, if we don't do it and sit there waiting, there is a risk, I believe, that Lincolnshire will be carved up and bits will go to Humberside, bits will go elsewhere. And the final point I'd make to Councillor Dilks is I abstained. You remind me, I abstained last time. But this council did, back in 2016, vote against the proposal. I would say this proposal is probably twice as good financially, twice as good in many ways, and the governance is much better. And the model we could have gone down was the same as Peterborough and Cambridge, has turned out to be a bit of a disaster in terms of what's happened. So I think this is a far superior deal. And like anything else, there's choices. Like any vote, it's not all 100% positive. We've got to make choices. And I think on this basis, I will be advising the council tomorrow to actually vote for this proposal, to go back to government, and hopefully they will then endorse it. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you for that, Councillor Hill. I've got two further speakers that have indicated. The first one is Councillor Brockway, please.
Thank you, Chairman. The leaders covered the comments I was going to make. Thank you.
So we'll go to Councillor Ashton, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that the comments I made a few moments ago, I restricted really to the area of environment and my excitement along those lines. Perhaps it was wrong of me to do so. And Councillor Dilks raises the elephant in the room as to whether governance and the concerns around governance are, they outweigh all other considerations. Well, Councillor Dilks, you raise an elephant, I shall raise you a blue whale. If we look across all of the metrics that have been considered, that have gone out to consultation, on all of those metrics, not just environment, with the exception of governance, there is overwhelming support across individuals, businesses, local government and others of those consultee responses. On governance, there is support across businesses, local government and others. There is only 12%, there is a 12% I fully accept margin where on individuals consulted are saying that they don't agree with the governance, they don't want a mayor. So on 23 out of 24 metrics that have formed part of this discussion, including 5 of those including individual responses, there is overwhelming support for what we are trying to do, what we're trying to deliver for Greater Lincolnshire. And only on one metric is there not support for what is on the table. 23 out of 24 ain't bad.
Thank you for that, Councillor Ashton. I've got no further speakers that have indicated. Councillor Smith.
And this is just to touch on the leader's point very briefly, Chairman, which is you will all remember the murmurings in around sort of 2010-ish, 8-ish, where things were all going to go into regions. And if we have something done to us rather than are proactive and do something to ourselves, the risk is we go into an East Midlands region. And if we go into an East Midlands region, we will be swamped and forgotten. We really will be a forgotten backwater, because that's how regions work. The money will go to Nottinghamshire, Derbyshire and Leicestershire, and we will see neither hide nor hair of it. So that is the choice. That's also something we have to figure out, because as the leader said, devolution is not going to go away, and we know from previous iterations that the Labour Party prefer regions rather than devolution in the manner that we're looking at. Is it perfect? No, I'm not going to sit here and say it's perfect. Would I like a mayor? No, I'd rather it be without one, as I'm sure most of us would be, but that's not what's on the table. We've got to go with what's on the table, and I would much rather Lincolnshire be Greater Lincolnshire as it used to be, rather than being an East Midlands region where we are the forgotten part of it. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you for that. So I've got no further speakers that have indicated, so I am going to move from the chair that the board supports the recommendations to the leader of the council detailed on pages 19 to 20 of the report, and I ask that our comments, as captured by Simon Evans, who is on Teams today, be shared with the leader ahead of the item being considered at council on the 13th of March. Do I have a seconder for that, please? Councillor Smith. So we'll now take a vote. All those in favour, please. Thank you. All those against, please. 2. And that's the whole of the committee. Thank you for that. Thank you. So we'll now move on to item 8, which is the future IT service delivery model. And this is a pre-decision scrutiny item, and this is found on pages 257 to 280 of the agenda pack. It aims to present an overview of the revised IT service delivery model, addressing risks and issues identified in the council's IT service delivery, following a pause in the procurement activity. Changes have been made to the original model to rectify these concerns, and the report seeks the executive's authorisation to commence procurement and provides information to assist the council in making an informed decision about the future delivery of IT services, particularly considering the upcoming expiration of the current contract with Serco in March 2026. The report is due to be considered by the executive on the 3rd of April 2024, and the views of the board will be reported to the executive. Our actions are that we can, 1, consider the attached report to determine whether the board supports the recommendations to the leader of the council as set out in the report, and 2, agree any additional comments to be passed on to the leader of the council in relation to this item. And this report will be presented by David Matthewman, Chief Information Officer, please. David.
Thank you, Chairman. So the Council's IT delivery contract with Serco expires in March 2026. In May 2022, a sourcing approach was agreed, but procurement was paused in late 2022 to allow time for a number of risks to be assessed. The key risks were a lack of IT maturity, coupled with the original plan to bring a lot of services in-house. As a result of the assessment and to significantly reduce the risk, it is proposed that no significant services are moved in-house and instead a single operational service provider delivers day-to-day IT for the council. A delivery change specialist or a flexible delivery partner is contracted to deliver change projects, and a specialist security provider is contracted to monitor our systems 365 days a year around the clock. This, coupled with improvements in IT, significantly reduces the risk in the original proposal. This is still a significant undertaking to transfer many services and systems from one partner potentially to a new partner. And to bolster that up, the senior IT team has been improved with experience to support and drive both IT forward and this undertaking. And to give you a sense of that, so I'm an interim and the permanent CIO will be with us on the 7th of May. We will have a new head of cybersecurity, the Council's first head of cybersecurity, at the beginning of April, a new head of IT architecture at the beginning of April, and a head of IT project delivery will join us at the end of the month. And we've scoured the market and we have selected a very good team to take IT forward and to improve the IT services. It is also critical to keep the programme on track and to allow adequate time for transition of critical council services to potential new providers. The proposed new model will give LCC access to a broader set of providers and the potential for more innovation. And as I said, this will significantly reduce the risk. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you for that. Do we have any comments or questions on this report? Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chairman. Are officers confident this will be the model used in the long term? And if so, do they perceive any technological advancements in IT that may undermine this view?
Thank you, Councillor Smith. So I think this is a long-term model. We're proposing, but this is still to be worked through, a contract time frame of 5 + 2 + 2 + 2, so up to 11 years. For this kind of change, I think it's important to invest and select partners that can work with us for the long term. I think this model, importantly, will give us access to more providers than we might otherwise have access to if we only if we go for a single source provision. And I think it's really important to right-size the relationships with the council, to work with providers where the council's business really does mean something for that provider. And typically, we should be able to access organisations that will be able to provide more innovation. To your point on technological innovation and change, that's going to continue to move at pace. I think we've all seen that AI has moved at an incredible pace only in the last 12 months, and that will continue to be the case. And I think that further underlines the fact that we must have partners that are able to innovate to meet the council's needs, but importantly, also able to innovate to advise the council on improvements we can make that will improve frontline services for the residents of Lincolnshire.
Thank you for that. Councillor Carrington, please.
Yes, I thank Mr. Matthewman and his team for the report. I just wanted to probe one area which perhaps you can't speak about very fully, and that's the issue of resilience and security. And I noticed you said there would be a new head of security in place in the coming months. We provide very essential services to the residents of Lincolnshire, and almost everything we do is based on the use of IT and computer systems in some way. The issue of security and the issue of resilience is really important these days, both against what we might call the private sector, in other words, criminal attacks, but also those who are connected to or sponsored by potentially hostile states. And I would just like some greater or additional reassurance on the importance which the team now coming into being will place on that area. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Carrington. So, as you quite rightly point out, Councillor, the threat landscape is developing all of the time, not just by hackers that are trying to make money, but also by state-sponsored hackers as well. The Council has put lots of time and effort and investment into this, particularly over the last 12 months, and that's reflected in our hiring the Council's first head of cybersecurity. That's not to say we haven't been doing cybersecurity, but in this climate, it now needs that level of focus. We've also put appropriate investments into putting in place state-of-the-art tooling to make sure that we can spot issues that might come up, and to invest in dealing with legacy systems that otherwise wouldn't be as secure as they should be. So I'm very pleased with the response that I've had from the council, from officers and from the executive councillor for IT in particular. I've had the backing that I've needed to put in place the measures that we need to keep us safe now and into the future.
Thank you for that. Councillor Brockway, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Could I just ask, what is Plan B if any of these companies we're proposing to work with go to the wall or anything happens within those companies? What is Plan B? What's our backup? This is following on from Councillor Carrington. I was going to ask some of those as well. So what is Plan B? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. So as part of the market engagement work that we've done so far, and we're about to do some more market engagement work, we'll make sure that initially we get a broad range of responses from a broad range of suppliers, so that we have plenty of choices to make. The most important part really is to avoid Plan B, of course, and to do that we'll undertake appropriate due diligence on any company that we plan to work with. And we are talking about fairly long timescales, so we'll be looking for track record and we'll be looking for financial stability, plus referencing from existing clients of those organisations. The core thing, though, is to get the balance right between the services that we will outsource, that will be largely commodity services, and making sure also that we are in a position to understand our own services and be able to move in the event of that scenario cropping up. But the main part really is to avoid Plan B altogether, to select the right suppliers, but also to be in a good position to move to another supplier if that became necessary. And that's the same situation as we're in today, of course.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that. Do we have any further comments on this report? No. So I will propose from the chair that the board supports the recommendations to the executive detailed on pages 259 to 260 of the report, and ask that our comments, as these have been captured by Simon Evans, be shared with the executive for consideration on the 3rd of April 2024. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Carrington. All those in favour, please? That is unanimous. Thank you. We'll now move on to item 9, which is the update on IT services project portfolio. And this report is on pages 281 to 298 of the agenda pack, and offers a status update to the board, presenting us with high-level perspective on various key projects through dashboard information captured at a specific point in time. The objective is to replicate the assessment conducted in prior board meetings, including the most recent one in September 2023, showcasing the advancement of highlighted projects commissioned through IT. And our action is to review and comment on the progress of the highlighted projects currently being commissioned through IT. And this report will also be presented by David Matthewman. Over to you, David, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Donna Fryer was to present this, but she has a personal matter today, so I'm stepping in to do the update. This is the regular report on the IT project portfolio. The projects are generally in good shape, but we have 2 exceptions on the report today. So the first is the Joint Strategic Needs Assessment. That project has gone live, but we have an outstanding item to do, which is to transfer it formally into service. That's something we'd normally want to do before going live, but we're taking a pragmatic view that getting the software live is the most important thing, and will complete that remaining work very shortly. The other project that is slightly off plan is Links to the Past, the redevelopment of that capability. We're in the final stages of the remediation, which we expect to complete during this week. Overall, the milestones for the Serco part of the delivery have been green for the last 12 months, and I'm happy to take any questions, of course.
Thank you. Are there any questions on this report? Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chairman. You've touched on one of them I was going to ask around the JSNA, but are we confident basically that path back to green will materialise? And the other one is similar in some respects to the previous report, which is around the PSTN analogue switch off of phones basically, and that is there not a risk basically of removing this? Granted, I appreciate now it's quite an antiquated technology, but that we're leaving ourselves open to, say, DDoS attacks, as Microsoft have experienced, Facebook experienced probably something along that lines when it shut, not for very long, but it did shut down and everybody had a massive minor meltdown. So that could either happen to us or Microsoft directly. Are we also not at risk around, say, the underwater cable issue, which is what caused the issue with Facebook and other social media providers, because a lot of that cabling is actually in the Middle East, which, as we all know, is quite an unstable region, and that seems to be quite prone to attacks from certain extremist groups at the moment. So is there not a risk of losing functionality due to means beyond our control, and have we got any means of mitigation so that our residents can still access that system, or our officers can when we need to?
Thank you, Councillor. So complex question, and I'll break that down. So on JSNA, Joint Strategic Needs Assessment, yes, we have good line of sight to that project being completed, and as I said, we took a pragmatic view that it was more important to get the project live than to complete the final pieces of paperwork. Wouldn't normally want to do that, but it was important that the frontline service was live first. In terms of PSTN, so that's the public switch telephony network. That's essentially the phone that many of us still have at home. There is no choice. That technology is switched off at the end of December 2025, so we do have to move. And telephony all telephony is going to move to essentially an internet-based provision, regardless. That's going to happen across the whole of the UK. So there's no choice there. In terms of resilience, the same protections that I've just talked about and some of the investments that we're putting in place will also protect our new digital telephony. And in terms of things like undersea cabling, the main protection we have there is pretty well all of our services are hosted in the UK in 2 major data centres. So we do rely on Microsoft technology. In fact, pretty well everyone has to. But we do have that technology not just in 1 data centre, but in 2 data centres geographically dispersed in the UK. So we shouldn't be impacted by geopolitical situations in the Middle East or elsewhere. And to be frank, that's about as much protection as anyone can really put in place. But we are reasonably well protected and reasonably well resilient across the other types of threats.
Thank you for that. Councillor Brockway, please.
Thank you for letting me come back, Chairman. Just a quick question out of what you were saying, if that's okay. On my home system, I've been forced from an analogue landline to a digital landline. So my mobile and my landline are now digital, which gives me only 1 source of security instead of 2. So we will be going digital. Ours will be digital as well. What backup do we have, given that those are now 1 source less available to us? Thank you.
So many of the ways in which PSTN telephony is actually delivered to the council is actually digital already, so the major part of that is transfer of contact centres and so on. The backup the council has, though, is having resilient networks in place, so that if one network point fails, then another network point, particularly into these buildings, will take over. And actually, that's probably a higher level of resilience than we actually have with the current PSTN technology. And to put it into perspective, we're already largely on digital telephony. We have about 300 lines to move. And we're anticipating that we'll be able to retire some of those lines as we move. So we probably only have around about 150 connections to take care of. We're going through an audit process right now.
Thank you for that. Do we have any further comments or questions on this item? No. So I will move that the report be received and that our satisfaction be noted in relation to the progress of highlighted projects currently being commissioned through ITV. Can you raise your hand if you agree, please? It's unanimous. Thank you. So we'll now move on to item 10, which is Transformation Programme Update. And you can find this report on pages 299 to 348 and presents the board with a status update on the Transformation Programme, offering a concentrated overview of the Corporate Support Services Implementation Project. The Transformation Programme is designed to facilitate collaborative learning within Lincolnshire County Council, fostering the identification of innovative ways to support broader council objectives through shared insights. While the council has a long-standing track record of successful service-led transformations, establishing itself as a council with nationally recognised services, the aim is to further enhance this success across all areas of the council. So our actions required are to review and comment on the contents of the report and supporting documents, and to agree future reporting requirements into the board. This report will be presented by Claire Rowley, Head of Transformation, and Andrew McLean, Assistant Director, Corporate Transformation Programmes and Performance. And I'd also like to welcome to our first board meeting Victoria Eaton, who is the Assistant Director for Commercial. So over to Claire and Andrew, please.
Thank you, and good morning, everybody. Thank you, Chairman. So as already outlined, the report does provide you with the background, the governance, the scope, focus, and also the projects and programmes of work that make up the Transformation Programme. Appendix A provides you and lists the projects and programmes that make up the Transformation Programme, outlining the detail and also the key project milestones, benefits and savings that we've already delivered or anticipate delivering through the Transformation Programme. As already outlined, we will have a focus, I'll pass over to Victoria shortly, on the Corporate Support Services Implementation Project as part of this work. The key points I just wanted to raise with you today were firstly to reiterate the governance that's in place as part of the Transformation Programme. This has been presented at previous meetings, but to provide assurance that each project and programme of work has an active project board with project leads that meets monthly. We do regular monthly highlight reporting and fortnightly checkpoint reports to the Transformation Programme as a whole. And there is also a steering group that meets 8 times a year, along with quarterly reporting into our corporate leadership team and regular reporting into this meeting. This all remains in place and strong. I also wanted to provide assurance on the benefits that they continue to be identified, measured and reviewed as part of the Transformation Programme. We've always been very clear on the need for benefits to be identified, measured and realised through to realisation. And we also recognise that some of the benefits identified will not be seen until after a project does close, but they will be continued to be monitored after the end of a project. The other part I wanted to provide assurance on was in relation to the management of risks and issues. They're regularly managed and we don't currently have any live issues as part of the Transformation Programme. As mentioned, Appendix A, within that I've shared details of each project, providing a high-level project overview, the current red, amber or green status, progress against the milestones, and also benefits both cashable and non-cashable for each project and programme of work. So what I'll do now is pass over to my colleague Victoria to provide that focus update on the Corporate Support Services Implementation Project. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the warm welcome for my first session. So yes, I thought I'd talk about the Corporate Services Transformation Programme. This last year came to executive where a number of recommendations were agreed around corporate services. We've talked about one of them this morning, which was ICT. And that at the time was going to be insourced. There was also, it was agreed that we would share, a shared services agreement would be entered into with an organisation called Hoople to undertake HR administration and payroll. We were going to insource finance and exchequer services, and we were going to recompete the customer services centre procurement. A few changes happened to that. Obviously, you've heard about the ICT, where that's been extended with Serco for a couple of years. We have reprocured the Customer Service Centre contract, and that has been awarded to Serco. So there's been some very limited change around that programme, and it will run from April onwards, albeit on a new contract with different price points. We unfortunately were unable to conclude the contract for Hoople. So HR admin and payroll are actually insourced, and that has been aligned quite well with the finance work streams. I'm not going to go through all the transformation detail. However, I wanted to give you all the reassurance that actually the programme has been and is on track, and there's no significant risks to highlight to you all. So most of the tasks with Serco have been completed. We have no red risks, and any risks that we were identified, we've had mitigations put in place. There was a concern right at the beginning about staff recruitment and retention. Those have been managed very effectively through staff engagement. So all the Serco staff that are coming into LCC have felt very valued. And it's fair to say we've had very little concerns or issues raised. Likewise, we had a number of third-party support services via Serco that we've extended to make sure we have resilience and security while we undertake further changes. There has been no impact on business as usual, which has been very positive. We have made some financial savings, particularly, which is a huge success to the programme. We've located 317 Serco staff are now located on the LCC sites, saving approximately 600k per annum. There are, obviously, the programme isn't due to finish till the end of March. There are still some stuff to do, but I'm going to be honest, it's pretty straightforward stuff, getting people onto payroll, getting people ID badges, some management management reporting and so forth. A number of the benefits that Claire and the transformation programme drive are we will have enhanced control over services. We've joined up the professional and admin parts of all the services, so we're looking to improve processes and savings. We'll hopefully be able to react quicker rather than managing through a third party. I've already mentioned some of the financial savings. So the project will come to an end in April 24 and we will officially close the programme. However, we will continue to identify key council processes where we can do further transformation and continuous improvement, and we will drive that continuous improvement through Serco via contract management, which is my area of interest. Happy to take questions.
Brilliant, thank you. Do we have any questions? Councillor Kendrick.
Thank you, Chairman. Page 321, there's a line there, I wasn't quite sure what it meant, forgive my ignorance. It's bullet point 2 under this work will deliver the following during 23-24, and it's a point about whole new suite of reports, and it includes the phrase, including a new front end for accessing reports and creating greater visualization. In layman's language, can you just explain to me what that means? Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. What that means is there's effectively a front page for all frontline workers to go to. So rather than having to look at different systems, they can log on to one page. It can take them through their whole suite of reporting that they need. We've worked with teams in developing that to make sure it reflected how they wanted to operate, develop videos so that they could go and view how to use the information, and also who to go to if they want anything further or a lack of clarity. So a front end is literally one portal, one screen to get all your information in one place.
Thank you. Are there any further questions? Councillor Smith, please.
Thank you, Chairman. And I'm going to touch on educational transport, everyone's favourite subject. I know there is in the longer term, a review that's going to be conducted. My query is, what are we doing in the interim? Because as Debbie will know after our conversation, it's no small beer that we spend on educational transport every year. And it's obviously through the report, it's still quite clear that there is still an awful lot of work to do, and I know it's very complex because a lot of it's statutorial and it's 80-year-old, 90-year-old legislation, but just some reassurance on that would be most welcome.
Yep, thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Vice Chair. So what we've done is we've put additional resources into educational transport on this project to support that work. We do now have a recovery plan in place that our Assistant Director, Nicole Hilton, is leading on. We've also got an interim head of transport who we've moved from within the organisation. As I've said, I'm deploying more resources from the Transformation Service. So I've got a senior project manager being deployed. She's there now to actually do that pause and plan. What were we intending to do? Where are those gaps and where do we go to next? And in addition to that, the school admissions and educational transport piece is also making up the business performance improvement programme as well. So we've got a number of pieces of work that are taking place now as part of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any further comments or questions from the board? No, I don't see anyone indicating. So I will move that the report be endorsed and our satisfaction be recorded on the progression reported, and I ask that future updates be added to the board's work programme on a 6th monthly basis. If that can be done, please, going forward. Thank you. All those in favour, please show. Thank you. It's unanimous. So we'll now move on to item 11, which is the Property Services Contract Report. And this report can be found on pages 349 to 356 of the agenda pack. It provides the board with an overview of the property services contract performance with Vinci facilities, covering the conclusion of the 8th year and including an interim report for the 9th. So the board is invited to seek assurance on the performance of the property services contract and to provide feedback and challenge as required. And this report presented by Stuart Wright, Contract Manager, Corporate Property. So over to you, Stuart, please.
Thank you, Chairman. So I'll provide a high headline overview of the report detailing the performance of the property contract with Vinci for year 8 and interim to year 9. Just before I start, I just wanted to point out one correction on the report in the summary. It says this report updates the board on the performance of the property services contract with Vinci facilities at the end of the 7th year. That should be the 8th year. And the contract with an interim report to year 8, and that should be year 9. So apologies for that. Just moving on to 2.1, Service Managers Assessment. As reported last year, there are cost pressures to property services. Energy costs have been a challenge during the past 2 years in particular, with a 175% increase in gas prices in April 2023 and 20% increase in electricity prices last October. The Energy Bills Discount Scheme, EBDS, has helped with £50,000 assist across the property portfolio. Also, on a positive note, ESPO is forecasting decreases this year of 10 to 15% in gas prices in April 2024 and 25 to 30% decrease in electricity prices from October 2024. It's still worth noting that the prices remain high, especially gas prices in comparison to previous years. Other cost pressures include cost of raw materials, labour costs and construction materials. An example of labour cost pressures can be shown within the report with the minimum wage increases affecting cleaning staff costs. So moving on to 2.2, health and safety. So closed calls and positive interventions are upwardly trending with examples provided within the report. Of the injuries reported by Vinci, 3 of the 7 listed reports relate to general health and safety awareness with appropriate refresher training carried out. So moving to 2.3, finance. The property contract has some carrots and sticks in terms of financial incentives and penalties. The pain gain mechanism helps drive efficiencies in specific areas of the contract, with Vinci attaining a gain in year 8, which can be seen from the table in the report. No service damages is the contractual term for penalties. The accumulative total is displayed within the report. Furthermore, supply chain rebates in years 8 and 9 to date is combined £10,000. 2.4 KPIs. In terms of performance, the contractor is generally performing well with a year 8 outturn of 94.95% overall. Year 9 is showing a good performance to date with a dip in the 3rd quarter on planned and reactive facilities management work. 2.5 relates to SEND. Several completed projects under SEND programme include 2 new schools, Boston Endeavour, which is a 148 place school, and Lincoln's Christopher's Primary, which is a 130 place. Furthermore, there's also expansions to the following schools: Bourne Willoughby Academy, Spilsby Eresby, Louth St Bernard's, and Spalding Tulip Academy. There are some construction projects underway at St Christopher's Secondary School and a new 150 place school in Horncastle. There are also pre-construction activities ongoing. 2.6 capital receipts. £5.2 million worth of disposals have taken place so far this year, with 212B Morton Estate netting 2.7 million and Gainsborough former Castle Hill School 1.1 million. Just moving on to reprocurement 2.7. The facilities management contract is out to tender currently, and this is at the invitation to submit initial tender phase, which is due to conclude on the 2nd of April. A soft market testing exercise is currently being conducted in respect to professional services, with the period for apply to deadline by 15th of March 2024. Insourcing of specific services to conclude prior to the end of the contract on 31st of March 2025. Just finally moving on to VMOS, that's 2.8. Both the Resources Directorate and by extension the Corporate Property Department have developed VMOS. Strategies for the corporate property are detailed within the report. With the vision, we are a high-performing, integrated team delivering a sustainable property estate. And that concludes the highlights. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that report. Do we have any questions or comments on this report? Councillor Kendrick, please.
Thanks, Chairman. Yes, on page 354, you've mentioned the SEND projects. I have to say I've visited a number of these projects that have been built, and I think we should be very pleased with the level, the quality of the build and the facilities provided. They're a great improvement in some cases or what went before. And I think it's something that the council could be justly proud of. It's a £100 million scheme over the number of years. It's coming towards the end, and I think it's something that has a great benefit for people in Lincolnshire. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you for that. Do we have any further comments? Councillor Boothroyd, please.
Thank you. I'd like to echo Councillor Kendrick's comments on the SEND schools. I think I've been around most of them now, and I mean the level of workmanship, the level of finish, and just the if you've ever attended one of the opening ceremonies with the kids, I mean it just all makes it worthwhile actually seeing the look on their faces and the facilities that this council have provided. I appreciate there's always more to do, but I think we've made a very, very good start across Lincolnshire for our children. I just wanted to also bring you back to 2.2 and health and safety. Most of you know what I do for a living, probably won't be surprised at this. Clearly the positive interventions is a very good thing. I just wondered whether we'd be able to highlight near misses on here as well, and whether we could have reportable accidents on here as well. It's something that I've been looking at and requesting. I just think that then gives a proper overview of what's happening in the report. So I think that would be welcome. Thank you.
No, I'd agree with that. I think if we can get that included in future, that'd be great, please.
Yes, those are routinely reported on, so those could be provided in future reports, absolutely.
Fantastic, thank you. Do we have any further comments? I've just got one, and that's on page 353, year 9 to date. It's just for clarification, actually, probably in my own mind, is that if they miss 2 planned maintenance tasks, is that classed as failures then?
Yes, those are classed as failures. So if it's a planned maintenance task, there's quite a stringent, it's based on a points criteria. So if they fail one, there's a 25-point deduction, so which is why the KPIs do look a lot lower when that actually occurs. And there's also financial penalties attached to that. And the contractor is supposed to complete, or they do, complete the work within the subsequent month.
That's great, thank you. I now understand a bit more. Do you have any further comments? No. So I will move that the report be received and the board is satisfied with the activity and performance of the property services contract reported, and ask that our comments and feedback be shared with relevant officers for consideration. Can you raise your hand if you agree, please? Thank you. That is unanimous. Thank you. So we'll now move on to item 12 of today's agenda, which is Scrutiny Committee work programmes. So you'll find the report on pages 357 to 380 of the agenda pack. It is this board's primary responsibility is to oversee the work programmes of other scrutiny committees, ensuring satisfaction with each committee's overall work programme and planned activities, rather than engaging in detailed discussions on specific items. This report provides us with an update on the activity undertaken by the Environment and Economy Scrutiny Committee, Highways and Transport Scrutiny Committee, and finally the Flood and Water Management Scrutiny Committee. So the report invites us to review and comment on the contents of the report, and 1, record our satisfaction with the activity undertaken, and 2, endorse the activity planned for the rest of 2024. The report will be presented in 3 parts, and we will start with the Environment and Economy, and that will be presented by Councillor Ian Carrington, the chairman of that committee, please.
Thank you very much, Chairman, and good morning, colleagues. I'd start with a general point, Chairman. The Environment and Economy Scrutiny Committee obviously scrutinises things which have happened in the past, but we do focus very much as a general thrust of our activity at the issue of opportunity. Yes, opportunity in the environmental side of what we do, but particularly in terms of the economy. We see our role very much as involving helping local government to facilitate economic development, and that can be a public and private sector partnership, if you will, which this council, we think, is so far handling very successfully. We've met most recently at the end of February, since we last reported to this committee. A summary of the outcomes on the items considered can be found on pages 360 to 362 of today's agenda pack. I'd like to focus in, if I may, on one particular aspect of our debate, and that relates to the visitor economy. The report that we considered highlighted the challenges faced by Lincolnshire's tourism sector, including adverse weather, economic difficulties, shortages and reduced opening hours. And despite these, the council demonstrated, in our view, strategic leadership through initiatives like visitlincolnshire.com, direct support to people involved in the industry, and also, crucially, development programs for companies and individuals involved in the industry. Key outcomes include a focus on attracting higher spending overnight visitors, support, as I've mentioned, for tourism businesses, and investment via the Tourism Commission. Members in our meeting stressed the need for championing Lincolnshire, for attracting, for example, journalists and other opinion formers, and improving the Visit Lincolnshire website. Challenges such as increased costs and inflation were noted, along with efforts to mitigate those challenges, not least the £2 bus fare cap. The Visit Lincolnshire team's targeted promotion and audience segmentation were particularly praised during our meeting. And we were given assurances that the report's comments will inform the destination management plan currently being drafted by the Lincolnshire Visitor Economy Partnership. Our discussions also covered nature tourism, the relationship between councils and other bodies working together to promote tourism in our county, and also governance of the Lincolnshire Visitor Economy Partnership. Considerations for future reports included the issue of more detailed statistics. We also explored the issue of what's being called a Lincolnshire Pass, and some of the challenges in joint ticketing, for example, between Lincoln Cathedral and Castle, along with ongoing use of the Castle for events, despite being a very old building by definition, some issues of accessibility. Finally, Chairman, the committee did ask officers to return in a future meeting to present a report detailing the key objectives for our strategic plan for the visitor economy, which will allow us to scrutinise the robustness of plans and help future-proof our visitor economy. Chairman, in relation to the public work programme and future activities, we're looking at a balanced and proportional set of agendas for the next few meetings, and we are working closely with leading officers towards programming future items, both emerging from existing work streams as well as those requested and introduced by the committee. And finally, the committee will have the opportunity to visit and be shown around the Lincolnshire Energy from Waste facility at North Hykeham. That will be on the 23rd of May. That follows a request by members, including, I seem to recall, the chairman, who expressed an interest in developing a greater understanding of this very, very important facility in our county. Chairman, the final point that I would like to make, and I'm conscious of the fact that I've said finally now 3 times, but this one is the final. The final one. We continue as a committee, as you would expect from the Environment and Economy Committee, to have a very strong interest in the outcomes of the work of the Flood and Water Management Committee, looking at the impacts of Storm Babette, Storm Henk, and other wider issues of flood and water management, and indeed those are subject to this agenda. I'm very proud to be a +1 on the working group which is looking at storm impacts. The environment is not something any of us can take for granted, and our Scrutiny Committee is deeply aware of that. That concludes my update, Chairman. Very happy to take any questions if there are any.
Thank you for that. We'll take all 3 reports and then we'll come back to questions. So we'll go to the flood and water management, as Councillor Carrington has mentioned it. Councillor Ashton, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and I must say I'm delighted to have Councillor Carrington as +1 as part of that working group, notwithstanding the obvious importance of these issues are to the committee that he chairs and the area of interest that we both share. I would just like to draw your attention and that of the committee to pages 376 to 380 of the agenda pack. Since the last report to this board in September, it has been a busy time for the Flood and Water Management Scrutiny Committee. To provide some context, there have been 10 named storms during the season, and 2 of these storms, Babette and Henk, have caused several instances of breaches and overtopping of flood defences. There are currently 230 Section 19 investigations underway covering 850 properties in Lincolnshire. And the Executive Councillor has set a target of 31st of August this year to complete these investigations. It is, in addition to direct impacts on properties, there are wider community and economic impacts. For example, the result of the temporary closures of main roads and bridges. As a result of this, Storm Babette was the main topic of discussion at our November committee meeting, and I was pleased to allow the opportunity for all members of the council with issues in their divisions to take advantage of the opportunity to come along to that committee and raise those directly with us. While in February, of course, the committee focus was on Storm Henk. As a committee, we are now aware of key locations where issues have arisen as a result of these excessive and unprecedented rainfall events over the last few months. To look at these issues in greater detail, the committee has established a working group whose remit and outline schedule are found on pages 379 to 380 of today's agenda pack. I would draw your attention to recommendation 3 on page 358, which seeks this board's endorsement for the working group to meet on more than 3 occasions in order to complete its programme of activity. I understand that it is usual and regular that working groups only meet 3 times, but appreciating the number of partner organisations that we need to see, that we need to hear evidence from, and the absolute need and requirement to listen to the effects and impacts on local communities. We are looking for your consent to increase that number for what is, I hope, fairly exceptional and unique circumstances. In addition to the activities listed, we will also be looking to encourage We're looking to engage with town and parish councils most affected by the rainfall and flooding, and I'm currently working with officers on, and the committee will have a discussion on this at the working group on Friday as how best to progress that. We're thinking currently at the moment heading in the direction of a field trip to get out and see precisely those impacts on the ground and the impacts on local communities. We will aim to complete our report by the end of summer so that it can be considered by the committee on the 14th of October 2024. And I think it's really important that this is done before the first anniversary of Babet in order for us to be timely. There are no changes to the items for future committee meetings currently listed on pages 378 to 79, but I would add that there is a plan to schedule an additional meeting during 24/5, which will give the committee a usual allocation of 4 meetings. Colleagues will appreciate that most committees lose a meeting during the election period. As a committee that only meets 4 times a year in regular circumstances and with the issues that are currently live and pertinent, committee and colleagues felt that it wouldn't be ideal to drop down to only having 3 committee meetings in that year. So that is my report to the board, and I'm happy to take any questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for that, Councillor Ashton. And then finally, the Highways and Transport Committee, and that is with Councillor Brooks, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I will take the report and Appendix B from page 366 to 375, which offers a detailed account on items considered in our January and March meetings, and that also provides information on our work programme up to December 2024 as read. However, I would like to focus in greater detail on the considerations of pre-decision scrutiny reports taken in March. Firstly, in relation to the Grantham Future High Street Fund, Marketplace and Station Approach projects, which outlined the Future High Streets Fund projects in Grantham, the committee received assurances that the projects aligned with the Council's master plan and emphasising and anticipated public realm enhancements for growth. As a committee, we approve the report and recommendations to the Leader of the Council and the Executive Councillor for Highways, Transport and IT. However, we express concerns about the overall project's costing and the reported public opposition to the Marketplace scheme. Officers provided us with detailed mitigation measures and scalability options, and assurances were offered that communication responsibilities for the disruption in Grantham lies with the South Kesteven District Council, with Lincolnshire County Council handling project construction communication through the appointment of a public liaison officer tasked with conveying messages about the specific construction of the project, including traffic management, practical implications and the day-to-day effects on businesses. Moving on to the next key item considered, a report to the Executive Councillor for Highways, Transport and IT on public rights of way, fees and charges. We were pleased with the robustness of the review that took place ahead of the new fees being proposed. Members unanimously approved the report, highlighting the benefits of fixed fee approach, yet we acknowledged concerns about significant increase in these fees. Officers assured us about transparency was achieved through web publications of the fees, and we were pleased to hear that increased charges would be directed to the service for improved resources, potentially including a reduction of waiting times. The committee expressed confidence in the proposed approach and supported recommendations to the Executive Councillor. Turning to our future activity, we have added further items to our list of future items for consideration, as shown on page 375, and I remain confident that our meetings and agendas will remain proportionate and balanced in future months. This concludes my update to you and members of this board, Mr Chairman, and I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Brooks. Do we have any questions to the three chairmen? No. I'd like to make a comment regarding the request to waive the provision in the Constitution. I'm fully supportive of that. I do think we need to have as many meetings as required to get the impact of the storms that we've had. So I'm fully supportive of that, and I'm sure the board today will support that. We do waive the provision. So do we have any further comments? No. So I will move from the chair. To begin with, that I'd like to thank the presenters for their detailed reports. I move the board's satisfaction of the work undertaken be recorded and the board endorse the work programmes as these have been developed to date. And finally, that the board waives the provision in the Constitution restricting the Storms Impact Working Group to 3 meetings, allowing it to meet more than 3 times. So can I have a seconder for those, please? That's Councillor Smith. All those in favour, please. That is unanimous. Thank you for that. So, and then we've got item 13, which is the final one on the agenda, and this report is our own Overview and Scrutiny Management Board work programme, and this is found on pages 381 to 392 of the pack. Provides an overview of the contents of our own work programme. We do not normally debate this item, and our action is to note its contents. However, I would like to note 2 changes since the publication of the report pack, which are one addition to the April's meeting, which is a scrutiny report on the scrutiny panel's terms of reference of the scrutiny reviews currently being undertaken, which is the Young Carers Review, and which is Scrutiny Panel A, and Scrutiny Panel B, which is a review of traffic management policy for Lincolnshire, and that 2, that the annual scrutiny report will be considered in our August meeting, moved from April to align with further reporting requirements, and it goes to Council on the 13th of September. Therefore, I move the report be noted with the caveat of necessary amendments identified since the publication of this agenda, which will be incorporated by our designated scrutiny officer. Can you please raise your hand if you agree? Thank you, that is agreed, and that concludes the meeting. So thank you all for your attendance. Thank you.